Me today, I've got Kevin, and we're going to be talking about the number one thing that's holding you back from your goals. That is, I want to know what this is. This, I want to know what this is, Kevin. So before we get into the detail, where can people find you?
Sure. Well, first of all, Tim, thank you so much for having me.
You're
I'm
welcome.
excited. Yeah, I always just say search Next Level University. That's our podcast. That'll have all the information you need. You can listen to us and you'll figure out, A, these are my type of people. B, these are not my type of people. So that's always what I say. I think it's the easiest place.
Kevin, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. You're dialing in from New Hampshire, is it?
Yes, I am dialing.
Because when you were on the road and it was snowing and
yeah, I was in Wisconsin last time. We were at an Airbnb. My setup was all over the place. Today we are back home. I feel comfortable in the studio. I just got back from Florida on Sunday, so no traveling anymore.
So, Kevin, what's the number one thing that's holding us back from our goals?
I think for most people, it's belief. I think the lack of belief. And if you think about it from this standpoint, as a human being, you have to have 3 beliefs to take a new action. Number 1, my goal that I'm setting is humanly possible. It is humanly possible for me to accomplish X goal. Number 2, it is personally possible. It is possible for me. And the third one is it will ultimately be worth it. And I think a lot of people get stuck on that second one. You can think of, starting a business. I mean, how many businesses are there? There's a bunch. So it's humanly possible to start a business, but is it personally possible for me based on where I am, what I know, who I am, who I identify as? It's one of those interesting things, Tim, where if you do not believe something is possible, you most likely won't even start. And if you do not start, you cannot finish. So I think that's the biggest thing.
So, let's go through that again. It's got to be humanly possible.
Possible for you, so personally possible. And then you have to believe at a deep level it will be worth it. It'll be worth it. Because it's one of those interesting things where if you do not believe something will be worth it, ultimately, what is the point in doing it? Where is the pleasure in doing it? If you don't think it's going to be worth it to lose 10 pounds, then the promise is not great enough for you to go through the pain. And I think that's another interesting thing. And you can think about it from this way too. So imagine that you have a 3% goal, something that I believe with 3% of myself that I can accomplish. You have a 33% goal, you have a 66% goal, a 99% goal, and a 100% goal. I think a lot of us are told to have big, hairy, audacious goals. But the problem is you can have those, but those aren't necessarily the measurements you should be comparing against. Where if your 3% goal is to make $1 million this year, and you do not believe it's possible at a very high level, you shouldn't beat yourself up if you don't get there. What's the 100% goal that you are confident that you can accomplish? So it might be, I am 100% certain I can record 1 video this year.
Yeah.
Right? I am 99% sure I can record 12, 1 a month. And then you just keep going down that frame where the understanding is your 3% goal should be a huge, huge, huge stretch. But I do not want you to beat yourself up if you don't accomplish it, because that's why it's the 3% goal.
Yeah. So I started running 2.5 years ago, and I went through that process because I've never enjoyed running, and so I actually went through it. I was on holiday for 2 weeks. And I actually spent the 2 weeks. My partner didn't know this. I was actually spent the 2 weeks visualizing myself running. So it was really probably about me getting myself comfortable that I can I actually see myself doing this?
Yeah.
And then I used an app to do it because I was starting from scratch. So I used an app called Couch to 5K. So I went through that process, but going through that process, I then went and started saying to myself, I'm now a runner.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm now a runner. Because I've said it so many times to myself. I'm now a runner, and actually getting when you're ill and you don't get up and you go running, that's there's something wrong.
Yeah,
because it's so ingrained in me that I'm a runner. Therefore, I get up 3 times a week and I go running.
Yeah, it's same with me, where people say, if I took the podcast away from you and you couldn't start another podcast, what would you do? It's like, I don't know. And I know it's a hypothetical. I'd start another podcast. I'd break the rules and I'd start another podcast because I am a podcaster. That's who I am as a human being. The interesting thing is, even when it comes to that goal, and you did the right thing, you worked on the identity level of I am now the type of person who wakes up and goes running. I am now the type of person who does stretches in between calls because I know the importance of that as an athlete. If you think of it as a human being, and I always talk to my clients about this, there's kind of 3 versions of your identity. There is the current version, there's the past version, and there's the future goal version. And we have to figure out what's misaligned. And my question I always ask is, which version are you closer to? Are you closer to the past or are you closer to the future? And that's a really good question to ask yourself, just in terms of understanding, in terms of progress, getting to the point where I am the type of person who feels comfortable speaking.
Yes.
That's a completely different life than I am the type of person who doesn't raise my hand in a group or an audience. Just 2 different lives based on one identity shift. It's definitely not simple. It takes time and it's challenging.
Yeah, and I think that I've found visualizing as a really great way of can I actually do this? The next thing that I've done is I wanted to stop drinking what you would call soda. Okay, and to drink, and so now what I'm doing is I wanted to drink water. So I actually took time to actually work out, and I'm now building it into what I do. It's got to become part of the habit.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying hello to Andrew because he always pops by.
What's happening, Andrew? Was it when you were coming up with that goal, how did you know, or I guess, did you know, or how did you know it would ultimately be worth it?
I just think it would be better for me. With the same with the running. The running was to at the time we were in lockdown because of COVID, and I kind of thought, well, if I get COVID, I want to be as fit as I can because it's because it affects you. So that was one of the reasons, but it's also one of the reasons always is to lose weight. Because I think it's something. Well, weight loss is quite often that many of us struggle with because we eat the wrong things.
Yeah, it's a challenge. The interesting thing, and a lot of people, like, I talk about motivation, and people ask me about motivation often, and I think motivation is important. But the problem, I think, sometimes is motivation can get you to create goals that aren't necessarily sustainable or accessible. I had somebody reach out to me and she said, and this was after a live event. She came to a live event and she was inspired. And she said, I want to be a speaker like you. Awesome. Love that. I said, okay, let's just check in with some realistic goals here. I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable are you jumping on a Facebook Live right now and talking to your entire audience? How far outside of your comfort zone is that? And she said, oh, that's like a 12 out of 10, way outside of my comfort zone. I said, oh, that's good. That's good to know. On a scale of 1 to 10, how outside of your comfort zone is it for you to record a video and show nobody? And she said, well, that would be easy. I mean, that's not hard. That's like well within my comfort zone. Awesome. On a scale of 1 to 10, how outside of your comfort zone would it be for you to record a video, send it to me? And she said, that's like a 5. Perfect. I think a lot of us, Tim, when we start, we're looking at the largest peak. So I want to be on a stage in front of 10,000 people. Oh, I do not believe that is possible. It's not technically possible yet because you haven't put in the foundational pieces yet. So my thought process is always, for you, there's a big difference between saying I'm going to become the type of person who is a runner and I'm going to run a marathon within 3 months. It's just not, it's a completely different life. And unless you believe it is humanly possible, or possible for you, I like to break it down into small things where your first speech should be to your phone, to yourself. And then maybe after that, you show a friend. And then maybe after that, whatever, you post it on social media. It's just the small steps allow us to see the next peak. But I think a lot of us are stuck looking at the top of the mountain from the bottom saying, there's no way I could ever get there. That's not the next goal anyway. The next goal is the next summit, then the next summit, the next summit.
Because when I started running, I said to myself, it's going to be 5K. And I'm not going to try and do it. It's not going to be the fastest.
Right.
And I'm not going to try and do 6K or a marathon. I'm just going to do 5K.
Yeah.
And for 18 months, I did 5K. And I didn't change it at all. And I didn't look, even though I track it on Strava, I didn't check to see whether it was a fasted. It was just about churning that out as a goal. It was nothing, no stretching, no marathons or anything like that. Yeah. And I still haven't decided. I still don't want to do a marathon.
Yeah.
Sounds like
it's
hard work.
It's a very simple fundamental. There's really 3 words that matter when it comes to success. Sustainability is number 1. That's why a lot of our New Year's resolutions end up falling off, because they're not sustainably set. They're motivationally set, or they're circumstantially set, but it has to be sustainable. It's sustainability, then it's consistency. So it's sustainable to start. It's consistent to continue. And then I focus on improvement. Then you focus on, okay, how do I improve my system? How do I improve my performance? How do I improve whatever it is I'm doing? But it's very hard to improve something that isn't already in motion. And I think that's where we want to start. We want it to be the best it can be. For many of us, the best it can be is real. And that's just a great place to start. It's very hard to improve something that is not in reality yet. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody. And I think messy action is the cure-all. You throw your shoes on, you tie them, and you say, I'm going to go for a run and see what happens. And 2 things will happen. Well, 3 things, I guess. It'll either go better than you expected, it'll go worse than you expected, or it'll go as you expected. The only way you'll figure that out, though, is to try, and there's no replacement for that.
What about accountability in setting goals?
Yeah. So I watched a YouTube video recently, it really blew my mind. It said, you should not talk about your goals publicly. And I said, interesting. Mm-hmm. Now, there is research behind that stating that if you talk about your goals publicly, it can give you a dopamine rush, and then it kind of represents you accomplishing the goal long before you do. But the purpose of this video was, don't talk about your goals publicly, because then people will pressure you to accomplish them. They will shame you when they don't. And maybe they're going to they'll shame you if you don't accomplish your goals. And maybe they'll take your ideas depending on what they are. I think that's more a representation of the audience and the community around you than anything else. You have to have some level of accountability, because if you don't have accountability, you don't have necessity. So just as a frame, I have where is it? Well, it's over here somewhere. I have a $100 bill that I show when I say this. I talked to my wife and I said, hey, Taryn, I need a favor from you. She said, yeah, what do you need? And I gave her a $100 bill. And I said, if I do not go to the gym 7 days in a row this week, I want you to rip this $100 bill up in front of me. And her initial reaction was, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. That is terrible. And I said, babe, number 1, I'm not going to let you down. I promise. Right? Like, this is accountability in a nutshell. And I said, number 2, it's going to help me stay accountable. She initially said, no, I don't want to do it. And then she came back and said, okay, I'll do this for you. I went to the gym 7 days in a row, because the accountability and the necessity associated with, if I do not accomplish this, this is what's going to happen. So it's one of those interesting things where if it scares you, it usually makes you do the thing that you're supposed to do. Now, obviously, I don't want to scare you into an anxiety zone, but if there's not enough necessity, there's not enough accountability. So accountability is going to get you up to do things that you don't want to do, even though you know they're what's best for you. And it's just a simple analogy of, if Tim is waiting for me outside to go for a run, I'm more likely to actually get out and go meet Tim than I am do it myself, because there's the accountability of, I don't want to let you down. I don't want to let the community down. So I think you talking to other people about what you're trying to accomplish is huge, as long as they're character-driven people who can help you stay accountable through love and not fear or shame, I would say.
Yes, and I think that the accountability of doing that money is a brilliant way. When I started the running, I talked to my partner about it, but there was no pressure.
Right.
But then she's been supportive about it as well. So so Andrew says, did you get the $100 back, or
I did get it. It's somewhere in the office. I just don't know where it is. I'd love to show it to you, but here it is. It's right here. I got it back. There it is. So, and I keep it on my desk. There's a reason I keep it on my desk. Not because I want to show it off to the camera, because I want it to be what I call a $100 habit, What is the thing that you decided this week I'm going to do every single day? That's what you bet. You bet on yourself. You bet the $100 on yourself. And imagine if you did something different every week. Now, does it have to be $100? No, it can be a $1 bill. It can be a gift card. It can be whatever you want it to be. I am somebody who is very inspired and very moved by money. Now, there's an even deeper layer, though. Again, if it was a $1 bill, would it matter that much? No, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But there's something about the action of my wife tearing something up in front of me that I can never take back. If that happens once, I can never take that back. I think as humans, we like to create streaks. We like to create. So for you, it's like, I haven't missed a day of running in 30 days. It's way harder to miss a day when you have a streak. Yeah. Because subconsciously you have something, you have momentum that you can see visually. I didn't want to create the opposite of that. I didn't want to create I tried something and I didn't accomplish it. And the other thing too, is I have a pretty high level of public accountability since I talk about it on podcasts all the time. So that makes it a little bit harder / easier. But yeah, no, I got the $100 back.
And the fact is that you actually enjoy going to the gym.
Yes.
And so what you're doing is that you've got a habit that actually is satisfying for you. So it's kind of what you've done is you've created something that's easy for you.
Yeah.
Because it's satisfying.
There's a level though too, and I think this is important, of I don't always want to go. I'm grateful that I did, and I'm fulfilled at the end of the day when I feel accomplished. I think that's an important thing is I enjoy the gym, but I have days I don't want to go. I enjoy podcasting, but there's days I don't want to do it. For sure. There's days I wake up and say, I don't want to do this today. Like I want to watch TV and be on the couch. But I have a business partner and a co-host. So having that level of accountability is great too. Humans are communal creatures. We do really well when we're in communities and other people are aiming for similar goals, because it helps us keep pace and it helps us just stay accountable. And again, it's one of those interesting things where if you're afraid to do it when it comes to public accountability, the reason you might be afraid to do it is because you know it'll actually work. And that's another interesting conversation.
So to summarize, in terms of making or creating goals for yourself, you've got to make sure that they're not too hard or not too easy, and they've just got to and they've got to be just about right. One of the classic things, isn't it, which is that we see experts. So if we're going from 0 to 100, we expect to be 100. We're actually, all we need to do is go from 0 to 1.
Yeah. That is a huge thing, is many of us think where we are today is where we are forever. And many of us think where somebody else is where they've been forever. When in the reality, they might've just started, or they most likely started the momentum a lot earlier than you did. And the interesting perspective, and this is why progress is very hard, from day to day, progress is invisible. You go for a run today, you go for a run tomorrow, not a lot changes. No. But over the course of a year or a decade, progress is impossible to miss, positive or negative.
And I'm now up to 7.5 kilometers.
Let's go. I don't know how many is that in miles.
I don't know. 3. No? It's 5 kilometers is 3 miles.
Okay. Yeah. So you're doing more than I am.
So I started off doing 5K. I'm now doing 7.5.
Yeah, and that's huge.
That's huge. 2.5 years. That's progress. Massive progress.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing is, even if you never ran more, it's still progress because you're doing something positive. So now you're doing something positive, even more positively. So that's another part of it. But yeah, I just think it's that understanding that not a lot is going to shift from day to day, either positive or negative, but that's how bad habits end up. You wake up one day and you're 15 pounds heavier. You didn't just wake up 15 pounds heavier. The awareness now of that has kind of taken place. It's the same on the opposite end of, you don't wake up 15 pounds lighter, right? You focus on it every single day.
Yeah. And as Andrew says, like any successful person, we never see the journey it took them to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the journey is long. It's usually relatively unsexy. And some people don't talk about it after they accomplish the thing. I think, that's one of my focuses is I want to take people on the ride. I've always tried to do that.
We at the weekend, there was one of the UK athletes won a gold medal or something, and what his job is to slide down a hill on basically on a tea tray.
Interesting.
And he goes up, it goes at 60, 70 miles an hour around this thing. And it always amazes me about how did he actually decide to start and say, I'm going to get on a tea tray and go around, because we look at it and it's perfect. He goes around all the corners and he wins a gold medal. But the journey to get there must have been pretty.
Yeah. Well, that's where it all is. One of the things I've said, and I don't know if it actually lands, it resonates with me. The journey is 99.9% of it, because you never really actually get the result in a way. I mean, yeah, you can get the weight loss goal, but right when you get the weight loss goal, you got to create a new goal.
Yeah.
So the journey is everything. I mean, you are the journey and the journey is you. The results are just the byproduct eventually of what you're doing.
Kevin, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. I think we've all learned a lot. We can take that away and actually start creating some goals and changing ourselves.
My pleasure.
Better people.
My pleasure, Tim. I appreciate you having me, and I'm excited to chat always.
You're welcome. Kevin, where can people find you?
Yeah, I would just say search Next Level University. If you want to listen to the podcast, it's Next Level University. We have a YouTube channel, 7 episodes a week, every single day, self-improvement in your pocket for free from anywhere on the planet.
7 episodes a week. And the other place we can find you is at the gym, isn't it? Of course.
Well, I got to get my stuff together because I was sick for a while, and then I just got back in town and I was sick again. So I will be in the gym tomorrow. Yes.
Brilliant. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today. Brilliant.
My pleasure.